Hi, welcome back to another episode of Susie Reads. And today we are going to read chapter 9 of Witches, Ghosts, and Goblins. If you remember last time, the imp and Oliver were successful in getting the perfect pearl from the king of the giants. And now they just traveled by sea to get back to the land of the goblins. But pirates attacked. Do you remember how they got away? Oliver was able to use the giant sleeping potion to put them to sleep and get away safely. Now they have to travel by land. Shall we see what happens? Let's get started. Chapter 9. One quest ends and another begins. It is not a very great distance from the Sea of Fairhope to the underground passageway by which travelers can reach the land of the goblins. The only road that leads from Fairhope goes through a pleasant forest. At the edge of the forest, one suddenly comes to a river dashing towards the sea. The banks are rocky and steep. The river is full of rapids and whirlpools. Fortunately, a sturdy bridge has been built across the river. Unfortunately, the bridge is owned and guarded by the largest and greediest troll for miles around. For years, he has exacted great tokens from anyone who crosses his bridge. Should he learn that Oliver and the imp have the fabulous pearl, he will certainly demand it before allowing them to reach the other side. At least the warning signs along the way tell travelers what to expect. There are those who have tried and usually failed to outwit the terrible troll. Will Oliver and the imp succeed? The coach that waited for Oliver and the imp was known as Fairhope Folly. Some said it had once been named Fairhope's Trolley, but folly it was to trust that it would get you wherever you were going. And folly it was called. Oliver and the imp had no choice. However, since there was no other transportation, "Will you take us to the land of the goblins?" Oliver asked the driver, an ancient dwarf who seemed to be half asleep. The dwarf yawned and peered at Oliver and the imp. "Only as far as the bridge. You'll have to walk the rest of the way." He yawned again and reached for the reins. "That is, if you make it across the bridge." From his coat pocket, he pulled forth an alarm clock. "We're scheduled to leave in 2 minutes flat. Better climb aboard." It was difficult to say which was oldest, the dwarf, the coach, or the patient horse who pulled the contraption. Oliver untied the rope which held the coach door shut. The imp and he stepped inside. The seat was patched, and there were several holes in the roof. Oliver hoped it would not rain. The dwarf tied the door shut. "How about paying me?" he asked. "I always collect before we start, just in case we don't get there," he chuckled. "How much?" Oliver inquired. 2 pieces of silver for you and 1 for your little boy." "I'm not his little boy," the imp screamed. "I'm a full-grown brownie." "Then that will be 4 pieces of silver," the dwarf said. Oliver handed him the money. "Why will you only take us as far as the bridge?" he asked. "Read the signs along the way," answered the dwarf as he climbed up onto the driver's seat. "You'll understand. Giddy up, Lightning." The old coach croaked and creaked and bounced through the town and at last came to the edge of the forest. Here they stopped for a minute while the dwarf looked at his alarm clock. "Right on schedule," he told his passengers. "How far to the bridge?" the imp asked. "Never can tell," the dwarf answered. "Sometimes the road stretches, other times it shrinks. Last trip was a stretchy trip. I thought we'd never get there. Giddy up, Lightning." The forest was unlike any other forest Oliver had ever seen. It was a dwarf forest. The tallest trees were no higher than the coach. Miniature bushes clustered among the little trees, and vines as delicate as lace twined around the tree trunks. Along the roadway, baby flowers nodded gently, and bees and butterflies as bright as tiny jewels buzzed and fluttered among them. Oliver and the imp were so entranced with the smallness of everything that they almost missed the first sign. It towered over the trees, and if the driver hadn't called it to their attention, they would never have looked up. They were so busy looking down. The lettering was at least a foot high. "The bridge you must cross is near at hand. Are you sure you can meet the troll's demand?" "Who's the troll?" the imp called out to the driver. "The terrible troll of Roaring River," the dwarf replied. "He owns the bridge, and before a traveler can cross it, he must pay the troll whatever price he asks. That's why I only go as far as the bridge." After that, the signs appeared quite often. "The terrible troll has this to say: if you cross the bridge, you must pay and pay." And a little later, "The terrible troll of Roaring River is always a taker and never a giver." "We're out of money," Oliver told the imp. "I gave the last bit of it to the driver." "What shall we do?" The imp searched his pockets. "I still have my good luck charm," he said. "It's made of silver." "I have mine too." Oliver took it from around his neck and handed it to the imp. "Why hand it to me?" the imp asked. "You'll need it for yourself. Or maybe you plan to give him the pearl?" "Never," said Oliver. "But I have a plan. I'll tell you about it later." The coach stopped. "This is as far as I go," announced the dwarf. "The bridge is just around the bend in the road. If you listen, you can already hear the roar of the river, like the roll of thunder, the sound of a rushing river, and rumbled and grumbled in the distance." Oliver and the imp jumped from the coach and thanked the driver for a trip without mishap. "It was a short one this time," the dwarf noted. We must be having a spell of shrinking weather." He waved goodbye and creaked away. "Now, what is your plan?" asked the imp, turning towards Oliver. But there was no Oliver to be seen. "Oliver!" the imp called long and loudly. "Come back! Don't leave me here alone." "Hush!" Oliver told him. "I am right here by your side. Have you forgotten the invisibility cloak we brought along?" "Oh, let me hide too," the imp cried. "Where are you, Oliver? You aren't being fair." "No," Oliver told him. "The troll is sure to hear our footsteps crossing the bridge. You must stomp heavily and demand free passage in a loud voice while I tiptoe across in the invisible cloak. That's how we can be sure the troll will never learn of the pearl." "But what's to become of me?" implored the imp. "Bargain your way out with the good luck charms," Oliver suggested. They were walking now towards the bridge. "No more talking," Oliver whispered. "The troll might hear us." The imp found himself a stick and struck the bridge with several loud bangs. As soon as he came to it, "Free passage!" he cried in a loud voice. "I demand free passage!" "Who is crossing my bridge?" bellowed the troll. "For all the world, you sound as though you have 5 feet." "Only 3, the imp yelled back. "My own 2 feet and my trusty cane." He whacked it again a number of times as he felt Oliver brush by him. "What a clatter you make!" The troll had now appeared at the other end of the bridge. Nearsighted though he was, the imp could see the terrible creature much too clearly. His green hair reminded the imp of water snakes. From under shaggy eyebrows, 2 beady, greedy eyes watched and waited. The face, half covered with a beard, also green and was wolf-like. The imp shivered, but still called out, "Free passage! I demand free passage, and pounded his cane. The troll barred the way. No one crosses the bridge for free, he stated. But I am in the service of the King of Goblins and of Miranda the Witch. They have each given me powerful good luck charm, which will bring me wealth and health of all my days. I don't believe you, the troll said craftily. Then see for yourself, replied the imp, and he brought forth the two charms which glittered in the sunlight. I'll have them for myself, the terrible troll demanded, which was exactly what the imp had planned. Then, having given the charms to the troll, with many cries of distress, the imp was allowed to cross the bridge. He found Oliver waiting for him on the other side. The rest of the trip was short and without trouble. As the imp said, all brownies know how to find underground passageways. In a few minutes, he proved it by leading Oliver to the tunnel and took them straight to the land of the goblins. The goblin guards welcomed them, and when Oliver said he had an important gift for the king, he and the imp were rushed to the palace with no delay. The throne room was packed with all the goblins of the court. As the two newcomers were ushered in, Oliver winked at Polly and Miranda and pointed to the velvet pouch at his waist, hinting to them that he had found the fabulous pearl. The imp smiled broadly and swaggered a bit. So, the king of the goblins said from his throne, you have returned. Am I to believe that you have completed your task? Oliver knelt before the throne. Yes, your majesty. From his waist, he untied the strings of the velvet pouch. He handed it to the king of the goblins. With a royal gesture, the king opened the pouch and withdrew the perfect pearl. He held it up, and there was a gasp from the goblins of the court as they regarded its size and beauty. Well done, the king remarked. The first task is completed. But it would not have been completed, your majesty, had it not been for my faithful companion, the imp. He was of great help. The king smiled at the imp, who now bowed low. And now, will the girl Polly step forward, commanded the king. There was silence in the court, and they waited to hear what Polly's task would be. Head held high, and hoping no one guessed how frightened she was, Polly curtsied to the king. Not far as the witch flies, began the king, but many mountain miles from here, there is a great place called Ghost Valley. There, in the valley, is the haunted mansion, and in the mansion, well guarded by ghosts who stay there, is the most beautiful crown in the world. I want it. Your task is to find it and bring it to me. Polly looked so worried and helpless that even the king felt a bit sorry for her. Don't worry, my dear, he said. You won't be stealing it. The ghosts took it from a castle they haunted many centuries ago. It belonged to my great-great-great-grandfather. I shall try my best, sir, Polly replied. The imp will go along to help you, the king said. And now, the court is dismissed. Polly, Miranda, Oliver, and the imp hurried to their apartment. There was much to be discussed and planned before Polly began her quest for the world's most beautiful crown. And that is the end of chapter 9. And next time, we'll travel to the haunted mansion and Ghost Valley. What kind of ghosts live there? Are they nice ghosts? Are they mean ghosts? What are they going to do to Polly and the imp? Guess you'll have to join me next time to find out. See you next time on Susie Reads.